the militant machine, King Varric, a figure of raw might and relentless conviction. His obsidian armor glinted under the throne room's pale lights, adorned with scars from battles long past. Varric's broad frame and crimson eyes embodied the ideal Zaldar warrior, unyielding, ruthless, and unshakable in his belief that strength alone defined worth. For decades, he had led his people with an iron fist, wielding war as both weapon and spectacle. Today, his throne room hummed with anticipation. Advisors and warlords gathered around the grand holographic display that illuminated the central chamber, each waiting for the king's verdict on an extraordinary development. "They dare to challenge us," Varric growled, his voice a thunderclap of disdain. The holographic message played once more, a transmission received from an unknown corner of the galaxy. The message was simple, almost dismissive in tone. "To King Varric of the Zaldar Empire, you are invited to prove your strength against a foe unlike any you faced. Meet us on the coordinates provided, if you are not afraid to lose." The king's lip curled into a sneer. "Who are these humans to address me with such insolence?" One of his advisors, a wiry strategist named Crowleys, stepped forward cautiously. "My lord, little is known of this species. They emerged on the Galactic stage less than a century ago, but reports suggest they are cunning and resourceful. They've avoided direct conflict, but their influence—" "Enough!" Varric cut him off with a wave of his gauntlet hand. "No shadow-dwelling scavengers will dictate terms to the Zaldar. We shall crush them, as we have all others." The room erupted in guttural cheers, the warlords eager for another campaign to add to their laurels. Yet beneath the bravado, a seed of curiosity took root in Varric's mind. The human's audacity intrigued him. Few dared to provoke the Zaldar so brazenly, and none had lived to tell the tale. Later, as the court dispersed and the war machine roared into action, Varric lingered alone. He stared at the holographic map, studying the unfamiliar coordinates. A flicker of doubt, rare and fleeting, brushed against his thoughts. Who were these humans, truly? What drove their challenge? And why did their words carry an edge of cold certainty rather than desperation? The Zaldar fleet assembled swiftly, an armada of sleek, black vessels that gleamed like predatory shadows against the stars. At its core was the wrath of Jorith, Varric's personal warship, an enormous dreadnought bristling with weapons capable of reducing planets to ash. It was a symbol of Zaldar dominance, a mobile fortress that carried the king's indomitable will across the galaxy. As the fleet prepared for the journey, Varric summoned Crowleys once more. The strategist, though cautious, was among the few who dared voice concerns in the king's presence. "Speak," Varric commanded, his tone a challenge. Crowleys hesitated only a moment. "My lord, I urge caution. These humans have no history of direct confrontation, yet their message was deliberately provocative. It suggests they are prepared for this encounter. What if it is a trap?" The king's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you doubt the might of the Zaldar?" "Never," Crowleys replied, bowing deeply. "But strength alone cannot prevail against an enemy we do not understand." Varric's lips curled into a grim smile. "Then we shall understand them. We will face them on their terms, expose their weaknesses, and annihilate them utterly. The galaxy will know that no challenge to the Zaldar goes unanswered." Satisfied, the king dismissed Crowleys and turned his attention to the fleet's departure. The journey to the provided coordinates would take days, but Varric was impatient. He longed for the clash of battle, the thrill of proving his empire's supremacy once more. The coordinates led to an unremarkable star system on the galaxy's fringe, a cluster of barren worlds orbiting a dim sun. It was an odd choice for a battlefield, offering no strategic advantage or resources worth fighting over. Yet, as the Zaldar fleet entered the system, they found no welcoming force, no opposing armada awaiting their arrival. Varric's jaw tightened as he surveyed the empty void. Is this their strategy? To make us wait, like scavengers circling a corpse? Suddenly, a faint signal crackled through the comm channels. The human's voice returned, calm and calculated. "Welcome, King Varric. We are glad you accepted our invitation. The game begins now." Before Varric could respond, the holographic display in the Wrath of Jorith's command center flickered to life. A massive grid-like map of the system appeared, highlighting anomalies near the third planet. The humans had left no fleet. but they had seeded the area with traps, decoys, and faint energy signatures designed to lure the Zaldar into disarray. Crawley studied the map, his expression grim. "My lord, they are attempting to divide our forces and draw us into ambushes." Varric's fist clenched. The humans' tactics were infuriatingly indirect, devoid of the honor and spectacle he craved. Yet a part of him relished the challenge. This was no mindless horde or feeble resistance. The humans were daring him to prove his worth on a battlefield of their design. "Prepare the fleet," Varric commanded. "We will meet these cowards on their terms, and then crush them with our own." The Zaldar fleet glided through the system like predators on the hunt, their sleek warships casting ominous shadows across the void. At the helm of the Wrath of Jorith, King Varric stood with unshakable resolve, his crimson eyes fixed on a holographic map that detailed their surroundings. Every instinct told him the humans were watching, waiting, and planning their next move. But where? How? The first ambush came without warning. A cluster of faint energy signatures appeared on the edge of the fleet's formation. They were small and scattered, too insignificant to be warships, but their sudden presence triggered alarms. Before the Zaldar could react, the anomalies erupted into a cascade of explosions. Brilliant bursts of electromagnetic pulses spread across the fleet, disabling secondary systems and scrambling communications. "Damage report," Varric roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Minimal structural damage, my lord," an officer replied, his hands darting across his console. "But we've lost contact with the outer squadrons." The officer never finished. A second explosion tore through the ship nearest the Wrath of Jorith, the flames engulfing its engines. On the display, the human strategy became clear, a coordinated strike to isolate and disorient. Varric's lip curled in frustration. "They fight like scavengers, preying on confusion and disorder. Regroup the fleet. We will not be scattered like prey." The order was easier said than done. As the Zaldar ships attempted to reform their lines, waves of smaller human vessels darted in and out of range. These ships, barely more than heavily armed shuttles, used the disabled Zaldar systems to their advantage, targeting key points with surgical precision. Each strike was precise, calculated to disable rather than destroy, as if the humans wanted the Zaldar to feel the weight of their vulnerability. Hours passed, and the battle devolved into a series of frustrating skirmishes. The humans refused to engage directly, retreating into the dense asteroid field surrounding the third planet whenever the Zaldar gained ground. Their tactics were maddeningly effective, and for the first time in decades, Varric felt the sting of uncertainty. In the command center, Crawley studied the unfolding chaos, his expression grim. "My lord, their strategy is clear. They intend to bleed us dry, small, precise strikes that weaken us over time. Cowards," Varric snarled. "They refuse to face us with honor." Crawley's hesitated. "Perhaps, my king, their dishonor is their strength. They do not see war as glory, but as survival. It makes them unpredictable." Varric slammed his fist onto the console, his patience fraying. "Unpredictable or not, they will break. Order the fleet into the asteroid field. We will root them out, no matter how long it takes." The Zaldar armada plunged into the asteroid field, their larger ships navigating the treacherous terrain with difficulty. The humans used the environment to their advantage, laying mines along narrow passageways and baiting the Zaldar into ambushes. Each step forward came at a cost, every victory undermined by another cunning trap. Among the human forces was Captain Elias Anderson, the mastermind behind the guerrilla tactics. Watching the battle unfold from the bridge of his stealth frigate, the Iron Resolve, he knew the Zaldar king was growing desperate. "Status report," Anderson ordered, his calm tone masking the intensity of the situation. "Zaldar losses are mounting," replied his first officer, a wiry man named Jacobs. "But they're adapting faster than expected. We can't keep up this dance forever." Anderson nodded, his sharp blue eyes scanning the tactical display. The Zaldar were relentless, their sheer size and firepower pushing the humans to their limits. But that was expected. The plan wasn't to win through brute force. It was to break their spirit. "Then it's time," Anderson said, his voice cold. "Signal the ground team. The king is our target." On board the Wrath of Jorith, King Varric paced like a caged beast. The battle was not going as planned, and the humans' refusal to meet him in direct combat gnawed at his pride. The Zaldar thrived on glory and spectacle, but there was no glory in being harried by ghosts. "My lord," an officer called out, his voice tinged with alarm. Unidentified life signs detected aboard the ship. Internal sensors indicate multiple intruders. Varric's fist clenched. Boarders? Here. They dare bring their cowardice into my sanctum. Before the officer could respond, the lights flickered and the hum of the ship's engines faltered. Somewhere deep within the wrath of Jorith, the human ground team had begun their assault. The human commando team moved with lethal efficiency. Clad in advanced stealth suits, they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the Zaldar dreadnought, planting explosives and disabling critical systems as they went. Their leader, Lieutenant Marcus Hudson, was a man of few words but unwavering determination. "Stay sharp," Hudson whispered into his comm unit. "We only get one shot at this." Their objective was clear: capture King Varric alive. It was a bold, almost suicidal plan, but Anderson had made it clear. This war would be won not by annihilating the Zaldar, but by dismantling their symbol of power. Varric met the commando team head-on in the central corridor leading to the command center. Unlike his soldiers, who fell quickly to the humans' precision strikes, Varric was a force of nature. With his twin plasma blades blazing, he tore through the human formation, his roars echoing like thunder. But the humans were prepared. Hudson and his team moved as one, using decoys and coordinated strikes to wear the king down. For every blow he landed, they retaliated with one of their own. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Realizing his position was untenable, Varric made a desperate charge toward Hudson, his blades arcing with deadly precision. But Hudson anticipated the move, sidestepping at the last moment and delivering a stunning blow to the king's back. Varric fell to his knees, his breath labored, his pride shattered. Back aboard the Iron Resolve, Anderson watched as the Zaldar forces faltered. The news of Varric's capture spread like wildfire, demoralizing the once mighty armada. The humans had achieved what no other species had dared. They had taken the symbol of Zaldar invincibility and shown the galaxy it could bleed. "Send the message," Anderson ordered, his voice devoid of triumph. "Let them know their king is ours." As the human ships withdrew, the battlefield fell silent. The Zaldar fleet, leaderless and directionless, drifted in stunned disbelief. Varric's defeat was not just a tactical loss. It was a shattering blow to the Empire's very identity. The great King Varric, once hailed as the invincible ruler of the Zaldar Empire, was now a shadow of his former self. Bound in heavy chains forged from reinforced alloy, his massive frame bore the weight of captivity, a humiliation he had never imagined. His ceremonial armor had been stripped away, replaced with simple, tarnished garments. His crimson eyes, once blazing with unshakable authority, now smoldered with a mixture of defiance and confusion. The humans had made him their prize. As the humans' fleet returned to their controlled territories, Varric was paraded like a trophy through the corridors of each major colony. Crowds gathered to witness the spectacle, their faces a blend of awe, hatred, and grim satisfaction. Varric walked with his head held high, refusing to allow his captors the satisfaction of seeing him bow. Yet, with each jeer and thrown object, his confidence chipped away. On the colony world of Aegis 7, a sprawling metropolis known for its industrial prowess, the parade was at its most ruthless. Varric was shackled to a hovering platform that carried him through the streets, flanked by human soldiers. The air was thick with tension as civilians lined the route, their voices raised in anger. "Monster!" a young man shouted, hurling a piece of rubble that bounced off Varric's shoulder. "Is this the mighty Zaldar king?" Another sneered. "Where's your army now?" Varric clenched his jaw, his gaze fixed ahead. He had endured wounds on the battlefield that would have felled lesser warriors. But this was a different kind of pain. The disdain of the humans burned more deeply than any plasma blade. They weren't just mocking him. They were dismantling the very idea of what he represented. Behind the scenes, Captain Elias Anderson observed the parade from a control room overlooking the city square. His face was stoic, but his piercing eyes betrayed an undercurrent of satisfaction. "Is this necessary?" Lieutenant Marcus Hudson asked, his tone edged with unease. He stood beside Anderson, arms crossed tightly. Anderson didn't look away from the monitor. "It's not about necessity, Hudson. It's about sending a message. The Zaldar glorify war, but they've never tasted true humiliation. By breaking their king, We break their empire's spirit. Hudson frowned. And if it backfires? If this turns him into a martyr? That's a risk I'm willing to take, Anderson replied coldly. The galaxy needs to see what happens to tyrants. As the parade reached its apex in Aegis 7 Central Square, the crowd grew more volatile. Varric was forced to ascend a platform where he was displayed before thousands of gathered spectators. A massive holographic banner unfurled behind him, its stark lettering spelling out the human fleet's message, "Glory ends here." A broadcast signal transmitted the scene across human and neutral territories alike. The galaxy watched as the once mighty king stood, unbowed yet undeniably diminished, in the face of his captors. For a moment, the crowd's noise quieted, as if they, too, waited to see if Varric would speak. He did not. His silence, his refusal to dignify their mockery with words, was his final act of defiance. Anderson, watching from the control room, leaned forward. "He's more resilient than I expected," he muttered. Hudson glanced at him. "What did you expect? He spent his life being worshipped. A man like that doesn't break easily." "Then we'll remind him why he should," Anderson said, his voice like steel. Beyond the humans' territories, the broadcast reached the farthest corners of the galaxy, including the Zaldar Empire. In the grand chamber of Jorithkar, Varric's closest warlords and advisors watched the feed in stunned silence. Their king, the embodiment of Zaldar pride, was being dragged through the mud, his image reduced to a mere cautionary tale. "What now?" One of the warlords growled, his fists clenched tightly. "Do we allow this insult to stand?" Another, older and more pragmatic, shook his head. "Our forces are scattered, our morale shaken. Rushing into retaliation will only deepen the wound." "Then what do we do? Surrender?" The room erupted into arguments, the once unified Zaldar leadership fracturing under the weight of the unthinkable. The broadcast had done more than humiliate their king. It had exposed the Empire's vulnerabilities to its enemies and sown seeds of doubt within its own ranks. As night fell over Aegis 7, Varric was returned to his holding cell, a stark chamber deep within a human military installation. He sat on the cold floor, his back against the wall, his mind racing. He had always believed in the Zaldar ideal, that strength and honor were the ultimate measures of a species. But the humans had turned his beliefs against him, using their ruthlessness to expose the fragility of his empire. For the first time, he questioned himself. Were the humans truly the cowards he had thought them to be? Or was their cruelty a reflection of the harsh realities he had ignored? A metallic clang broke his thoughts as the cell door slid open. Anderson entered, his expression unreadable. "You're quiet for a king," Anderson said, stepping closer. "I expected more bravado." Varric met his gaze. "You believe this will make you victorious? Dragging me through your streets like some beast." Anderson tilted his head. "It's not about victory. It's about preventing another war. Your empire thrives on glory. We're making sure you and your people understand the cost of it. You think this will break the Zaldar?" Varric growled. "You underestimate us." Anderson leaned in, his voice a low whisper. "And you underestimated us." As Anderson left the cell, the door sealed shut with a resonant thud. Varric was left alone once more, the weight of his defeat pressing down on him. But even in his isolation, a spark of defiance remained. In the galaxy at large, the repercussions of his fall began to unfold. Would the Zaldar rally to reclaim their honor, or would their empire fracture under the weight of his disgrace? And how far were the humans willing to go to maintain their dominance? The galaxy, once a vast theater of endless wars and unyielding conquests, stood on the precipice of transformation. The fall of King Varric had sent ripples through every corner of known space, challenging the very foundations upon which empires were built. As the dust settled from the brutal parading of the Zaldar king, the true impact of humanity's ruthless tactics began to manifest, reshaping alliances and power structures across the stars. In the cold confinement of his cell, King Varric wrestled with the shambles of his identity. The once mighty ruler, revered for his unbreakable spirit and martial prowess, now faced the stark reality of his empire's vulnerability. The walls of his cell were stark and unadorned, a stark contrast to the opulent halls of Jorithkar, where he had once commanded respect and fear. Varric sat in silence, his crimson eyes reflecting a turmoil that no enemy weapon could inflict. The relentless pride that had fueled his conquests now gnawed at him, replaced by a burgeoning realization that his empire's obsession with war had led them to this moment of disgrace. The human strategy had not only captured him, but had also ignited a seed of doubt about the true value of endless conflict. A soft knock echoed through the chamber, and Anderson entered without preamble. His presence was a stark reminder of the human's unwavering resolve. Varric looked up, meeting Anderson's unwavering gaze. "You've achieved your objective," Varric stated, his voice devoid of its former authority. Anderson nodded, his expression inscrutable. "Yes, but the war is far from over. This is just the beginning of a new era." Varric's mind raced. And what era is that? One where kings are paraded like trophies and empires crumble from within. Anderson stepped closer, his tone measured. An era where strength is not defined solely by the ability to wage war, but by the capacity to end it. The galaxy is tired of endless conflict. We offer a different path, one of strategic dominance without glorified battles. Varric absorbed these words, the implications settling heavily on his shoulders. The Zaldar Empire had thrived on the chaos of war, but now that chaos was being dismantled by a force that valued cunning and strategy over sheer might. Back in Jorithkar, the heart of the Zaldar Empire was in turmoil. The broadcast of Varric's humiliation had fractured the once unified leadership. Warlords and advisors, once loyal to the throne, now questioned the future of their society. The Grand Chambers, once echoing with declarations of war and conquest, were now filled with heated debates and uncertainty. General Theric, a staunch loyalist of Varric, stood before the remaining council members, his voice booming with indignation. "We cannot allow this insult to pass. Our honor has been tainted by these humans. We must retaliate with the full might of the Zaldar." Across the room, Admiral Zarek, a more pragmatic leader, countered with calm authority. "Theric, our forces are scattered and demoralized. A direct retaliation would only further weaken us. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our approach." The tension was palpable. The once clear path of relentless war, now obscured by doubt and fear. The council was divided. The unity that had propelled the Zaldar to galactic dominance, now fractured by the very tactics that had led to their downfall. Amidst the chaos, whispers of rebellion began to surface. Some warlords advocated for a return to traditional warfare, while others saw merit in adopting more strategic and less glorified methods. The ideological rift threatened to tear the empire apart, each faction vying for control in the wake of their king's disgrace. Meanwhile, the human fleet, led by Captain Elias Anderson, solidified their newfound dominance. The Iron Resolve and its accompanying ships became symbols of a different kind of power, one that relied on intelligence, strategy, and psychological warfare rather than brute force. Anderson's leadership was marked by calculated decisions and a clear vision for a galaxy no longer shackled by endless wars. In the command center of the Iron Resolve, Anderson addressed his officers with quiet authority. "Our victory over Varric was not just a tactical win. It was a statement. The galaxy is watching, and it's time to redefine what true strength means." Lieutenant Marcus Hudson stood beside him, his expression resolute. "What's our next move, Captain?" Anderson's eyes met Hudson's, reflecting the weight of their responsibilities. "We continue to dismantle the remnants of the Zaldar Empire, but we also offer something more, an alternative to endless conflict. We establish councils, promote diplomacy, and ensure that no single power can dominate through fear and war alone." Their strategy began to resonate across the galaxy. Other species, long weary of perpetual warfare, began to align themselves with the human's vision. Former enemies found common ground, and new alliances formed based on mutual respect and the shared desire for lasting peace. The humans, once underestimated, had become pivotal players in reshaping the galactic order. In his solitude, Varric found himself at a crossroads. The once unquestioned warrior now grappled with the possibility of change. The humans had not just defeated him, they had forced him to confront the very essence of his existence. The relentless pursuit of war, once his guiding principle, now seemed hollow in the face of the suffering it had caused. One evening, as the artificial day cycled within his cell, Varric reflected on his life's choices. The countless battles, the lives taken, and the endless quest for glory, all now seemed meaningless. The humans had shown him that there was another way, a path that did not rely on the destruction of others to assert dominance. A guard entered, unlocking his cell door. Varric stood, a newfound determination in his eyes. He approached Anderson, who awaited him with a measured stance. "I have come to understand," Varric began, his voice steady yet filled with vulnerability, "that true strength lies not in conquering others, but in overcoming one's own flaws." Anderson regarded him thoughtfully, acknowledging that is the first step towards redemption. "The galaxy has changed, Varric. It's time for you to change with it." Varric nodded, accepting the path laid before him. "What must I do?" Anderson extended his hand. "Help us rebuild. Guide your people towards a future where war is not the only measure of strength." Varric took the offer, a symbolic gesture of his willingness to embrace a new identity. As he joined forces with the humans, the Zaldar Empire began its slow transformation. Leaders like Varric, once defined by their might, now became advocates for peace and strategic diplomacy. The galaxy, now influenced by humanity's strategic dominance and the reformed Zaldar leadership, entered a period of unprecedented change. Old rivalries softened and new collaborations flourished. The once war-torn regions of space saw the emergence of cooperative ventures, scientific advancements, and cultural exchanges that had been impossible amidst constant conflict. Anderson and Varric worked side by side, their partnership symbolizing the potential for transformation and unity. Their efforts inspired other species to adopt similar approaches, fostering a network of alliances built on trust and mutual respect. However, not all were pleased with this new order. Fringe groups, clinging to the old ways of glorified warfare and conquest, began to resist the shift. These radicals saw the humans and the reformed Zaldar as threats to their traditional values and sought to undermine the fragile peace that had been established. Anderson remained vigilant, aware that maintaining this new balance required constant effort and resilience. "We've made significant progress," he addressed his crew, "but we must remain steadfast. The path to lasting peace is fraught with challenges, and we cannot afford to become complacent." As the galaxy adjusted to its new dynamics, the legacy of King Varric and the humans' ruthless tactics became a topic of contemplation and debate. Varric, now a leader committed to peace, often reflected on his past with a mix of regret and hope. His transformation served as a powerful testament to the possibility of change, inspiring others to reconsider their own approaches to conflict and leadership. In the quiet moments of leadership, both Anderson and Varric understood that their journey was far from over. The galaxy had shifted, but the remnants of old conflicts lingered, a reminder that true peace required continuous dedication and unwavering commitment. The story of the Zaldar Empire and humanity's decisive role in its downfall and rebirth was far from a closed chapter. It was an evolving narrative, one that would continue to shape the destiny of countless worlds and species. The question remained, could the galaxy sustain this newfound harmony, or would the shadows of the past resurface to challenge the fragile peace? In the heart of a newly established council chamber, representatives from various species gathered to discuss the future of the galaxy. Among them stood Varric and Anderson, their alliance symbolizing the dawn of a new era. Varric addressed the assembly, his voice carrying the weight of his past and the promise of the future. "We have witnessed the devastation that unchecked ambition and glorified war can bring. Let us commit to a path of strategic collaboration, where strength is measured by our ability to create and sustain peace." Anderson nodded in agreement. "Together, we can build a galaxy that honors both our histories and our potential. Let us ensure that the sacrifices made are not in vain, and that the future generations inherit a universe defined by unity and understanding."